This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Gelman, for the very warm introduction and kind words. It's been such a spectacular Shabbos, and now there's a book signing. Actually, I never had a book signing before. What is the author of a book supposed to say at the book signing? So I guess I'm supposed to say the books are really good, and you should buy them. The Yerushalmi tells us that after we read the Megillah, we have to make certain comments about the characters in the Megillah. We have to praise the good guys and curse the bad guys. We say, Baruch Mordechai, Arur Haman. Blessed is Mordechai, cursed is Haman. And then there's this guy, he's a character, he's nondescript. We don't exactly know what he's all about. Charvoina. And about Charvoina, we don't say, blessed is he, and we don't curse him. We just say, V'gam Charvoina, Zachor Latov. He should be remembered for the good. And the question is, if he's a good guy, so bless him. If he's a bad guy, curse him. What's this like mediocre comment? He should be remembered for the good. There's another individual who we apply the phrase Zachor Latov to. Who else is Zachor Latov? Eliyahu Hanavi, Zachor Latov. Eliyahu Hanavi, Zachor Latov. Interesting, Eliyahu gets the same comment as Charvoina. Why is that? Charvoina appears twice in Megillah Esther, once in Parak Aleph and once in the end of the story. In Parak Aleph, there's a whole list of the advisors of Achashverosh. Ba'yoyim hashvi'i, k'toiv lev hamelech, ba'yoyin amar. Limhuman, Bizisa, Charvoina. Now, Charvoina in Parak Aleph is spelled with a Aleph. Charvoina, Ches, Reish, Beis, Vav, Nun, Aleph. And then, when Haman takes the misstep with Esther and Charvoina is standing there, in Parak Zayin, the Pasuk says, Vayoymer Charvoina, Echad min asorisim. And there Charvoina is spelled Ches, Reish, Beis, Vav, Nun, Hey. So why is there a discrepancy in how we spell Charvoina? Why in Parak Aleph is he spelled with an Aleph, and in Parak Zayin he's spelled with a Hey? So here's the story. Charvoina was not a good guy. He was one of the advisors of Achashverosh. But when he saw that things were turning, the tide was turning, Chazal say he ran away. So what's he doing in the end of the story? Says Pirkei de Rabbi Elazar, that wasn't Charvoina. It was someone dressed up in the guise of Charvoina. Who was it? The Medrash says it was actually Eliyahu Hanavi dressed up in the guise of Charvoina. So we're not really praising Charvoina because Charvoina was a bad guy, but we're really praising Eliyahu Hanavi. So the Maharil says the reason why we say V'gam Charvoina Zachor Latov is we're referencing Eliyahu Hanavi who dressed up in his best Purim costume as Charvoina. And therefore we say, V'gam Charvoina Zachor Latov. So there's an interesting sefer, Shalsut Shuvas Mayim Chaim, Reb Chaim HaKoyin Rappaport, Siman Chaf Beis, it was republished recently, who says that accounts for the discrepancy in spelling of Charvoina between Parak Aleph and Parak Zayin. There's a law in writing Gittin and writing documents of divorce. How do you spell a name? Do you spell a name with an Aleph at the end, or do you spell a name with a Hey at the end? There's a Shiloh with the name Akiva. Is Akiva Ayin Kuf Yud Vei's Aleph or Ayin Kuf Yud Vei's Hey? Any Akivas here? Good. Yeah? He said Hey. He said Hey. So it's interesting. There was a sefer of one of the Rishonim, Rabbi Yitzchak Mivina, the Or Zarua, who, interesting, he named the name of a sefer Or Zarua because he had a question how to spell the name Akiva. He could not decide, cannot figure out, do you spell Akiva Ayin Kuf Yud Vei's Hey or Ayin Kuf Yud Vei's Aleph? And he had a dream, and in his dream, God showed him the following pasuk: Or Zarua La Tzadik Uli Yishrei Lev Simcha. Soifei Tevois, Or ends in a Resh, Zarua ends in an Ayin, La Tzadik ends in a Kuf, Uli Yishrei ends in a Yud, Lev ends in a Vez, Simcha ends in a Hey, spells out Reish Akiva, Rabbi Akiva. So he realized God was showing him the correct spelling of Rabbi Akiva's with a hey. We don't paskin that way. We paskin, Akiva spelled with an aleph. But in general, and that's, by the way, why he named his sefer, or Zarua, after the pasuk that he was prophetically shown in the dream. We paskin that if you're spelling a Shem Kodesh, a holy name, you write it with a hey at the end. When you're spelling a Shem Chayil, you spell it with an aleph in the end. So Charvoina in Perek Aleph was the name of the secular advisor of Achashverosh, and therefore it's spelled with an aleph at the end. And in Perek Zayin, it's Eliyahu Hanavi, so since it's a holy individual, it's spelled with a hey at the end. Why am I talking about this? First of all, what else am I supposed to speak about at a book signing? But the Ramah tells us that Saturday night, Matzai Shabbos, we're supposed to speak about Eliyahu Hanavi. That's the subject of choice. Why? Because he doesn't come Friday, because Friday people are cooking. He doesn't come Shabbos, because he would have to go out of the Tchum on Shabbos. So the first opportunity for Eliyahu Hanavi to come is Saturday night, and therefore Matzai Shabbos, right after Havdalah, you're supposed to mention Eliyahu Hanavi. How many times? Some suggest 3 times. Others say 30. The Arizal says you should mention Eliyahu Hanavi, his name, 130 times. So this year will not be finished until somehow... No, just joking. But at least we mentioned him. While we're on the subject of Eliyahu Hanavi, it's very interesting that Eliyahu Hanavi makes a number of guest appearances in the Purim story. The Medrash tells us that when the Jewish people's lives were on the line, Eliyahu Hanavi went and he woke up Avraham, he woke up Yitzchak, he woke up Yaakov, and he says, let's go, wake up, the Jewish people are in trouble. You need to galvanize them, you have to arouse them to tshuva. And then he wakes up Moshe Rabbeinu and he says, let's go Moshe, teach the Jewish people to do tshuva. You daven upstairs in heaven, Mordechai will daven downstairs on earth, and between you, Moshe and Mordechai, the two of you together will save the Jewish people. But bottom line is, who aroused Moshe Rabbeinu to pray for the Jewish people to save us from Haman? Eliyahu Hanavi. That's one appearance Eliyahu Hanavi makes. Another appearance. The Gemara Megillah Daf Tezvav Amud Beis. The Gemara asks an interesting question. Mordechai tells Esther, Esther, Im hachareish tacharishi ba'eis hazois. Esther, if you don't go into Achashverosh's room and plead for your people, then your whole queenship was for naught. The only reason you were appointed to be queen is for a moment like this. So what does Esther do? He goes to Achashverosh, she invites Achashverosh to a party, and she invites Haman to the party. And the Gemara is bewildered, the Gemara is astounded. Why did Esther invite Haman? And the Gemara gives about a dozen mystical, psychological, emotional reasons why she included Haman at the party. Because maybe Haman would make a misstep, and then Achashverosh would get angry at him. Or there's a rule that if you have an enemy, you should invite them to a meal. I remember I was once a rabbi in a shul, and obviously in Chicago, rabbis don't have enemies, but everywhere else they do. And by the way, if you don't have an enemy, you're not a rabbi. You know, Mordechai, by the end of the story, he saved the whole Jewish people. What does it say? Most people liked him. That's what it says. Most people liked him. Which is that's as best as you could do if you're a rabbi. Anyway, so there's a rule, if somebody is your enemy, you should invite them to a meal. So I once had a guy, he just didn't like me. I didn't know what to do with him. So I called him up, I invited him to a Shabbos meal. I never saw him again. I don't know what happened to him. He's like, he disappeared. But it works. It says, Imra, it works. Imroiv soinacha hachileu lechem. That's not why you invited me, because we didn't know each other before. But the Gemara gives many, many reasons why Esther invited Haman, and the Gemara asks, so who's right? Of these 12 reasons, who's correct? So Ashkechei Rabba Baravul Eliyahu, they asked Elijah the prophet, and Eliyahu said, Kekulu Tanoi Kekulu Amaroi, all the above reasons are right. It's interesting that Eliyahu Hanavi had special insight into the Purim story to know all the reasons were right. Then there's a story with Reb Chaim Volozhiner. So one time on a Purim, an Ani came to Reb Chaim and the Ani asked for $1, so Reb Chaim Volozhiner gave him $1, and he said, if you give me another $1, or whatever the currency was in Volozhin, I'll tell you a Dvar Torah. So Reb Chaim gave him another $1, And the Ani said, how do we know that in the times of Haman, the decree was sealed with cement, with tit, and not with blood? If God would have signed it with blood, it would have been fait accompli, it would have been a done deal, but now that it was only sealed with cement, it's reversible. So Reb Chaim said, tell me. So this Ani said, I'll tell you. It says, Haman ben Hamadasa Tzara Yehudim Chasha Yehudim Lehumam Ule'abedam could be read Veloy Bedam, and not with blood. Chaim Blanche says, wow, that's unbelievable. Where did you get that from? And he disappeared. So he told the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon said it was Eliyahu Hanavi. So we see Eliyahu Hanavi is very associated with the Purim story. He woke up Moshe Rabbeinu to pray for us. He revealed to us that all the various motivations of Esther inviting Haman, he's the one who taught us this Dvar Torah. Why is Eliyahu Hanavi so connected to the Purim story? Obviously, to find an answer to this question, we have to go to the opening words of Orach Chaim HaKadosh on Parshas Tetzaveh. Where else? How long did Achashverosh's party last for? Shmainim u'ma'as yom, 180 days. Says Maharil since. Why 180 days? Because Yitzchak Avinu lived 180 years. So therefore, the party that was 180 days evoked and invoked the merit of Yitzchak Avinu. What does Yitzchak Avinu have to do with the Purim story? Moreover, Chassam Sofer writes, how many sons did Haman have? Roiv Banav, the Gemara Megillah said he had 208 sons, Gematria Yitzchak. What does Yitzchak have to do? We know the learning is L'zecher Nishmas Malka Bas Yitzchak. So we got in Shmuel, Shemain ben Yeshaya Beryl, and now Malka Bas Yitzchak. Yitzchak is Gematria 208. And that corresponds somehow to the children of Haman. So let's wrap this all up. Orach Chaim HaKadosh says there are 4 exiles the Jewish people have endured in our Gala, in our collective history. Babylon, Persia, Greece, Edom. And those 4 Galosim, we are redeemed in the merit of 4 great tzaddikim, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe Rabbeinu. Orach Chaim HaKadosh says, now we're in Galus Edom, who's going to get us out? Moshe. What is Moshe like? Moshe taught us the Torah. Therefore, says Orach Chaim HaKadosh, Moses will not allow us to be redeemed until we reach a certain threshold of Limud HaTorah, and then we will be redeemed. So in our Galus today, in order to get out, we have to access the merit of Moshe, which is Limud HaTorah. But the second Galus is Galus Madai, Paras, Persia. In whose merit were we redeemed? In the merit of Yitzchak Avinu. So now we know why the party had to last 180 days, corresponding to the years of Yitzchak Avinu, and why Haman's 208 children were annulled through the numerical value of Yitzchak Avinu. So Yitzchak Avinu is connected to the story of Purim. And where does Eliyahu come in? So here it goes. The Gemara in Brachos tells us, Daladam and Beis, Michael ba'achas, Gavriel b'shtayim, Eliyahu ba'arba. Michael, the angel of mercy, he carries out a mission in one jump. He doesn't stop. When God sends him on a mission of mercy, he carries it out like that. Michael ba'achas. Gavriel is the malach of din, b'shtayim. He carries it out in 2 jumps. God gives him a chance to pause, to stop, to think whether this needs to be done or to reconsider. Eliyahu be'arba. Eliyahu with 4. So anybody know what is the numerical value of Eliyahu? Aleph Lamed 31, Yud is 10, 41, Hey is 46, and Vav 52. Eliyahu is 52. Eliyahu be'arba. Eliyahu times 4 is 208. Pinchas. That's the meaning that Pinchas hu Eliyahu, because Eliyahu times 4 is Pinchas. Eliyahu be'arba. And the Paneach Raza says the midah of Pinchas is the midas hadin of Yitzchak Avinu, who's also 208. Comes the commentary on the Paneach Raza, called Raza de Meir, who is the son-in-law of the Maharal of Prague, and he reveals to us one startling fact. Yitzchak Avinu was reincarnated as Eliyahu Hanavi. So it's good to know. Now you'll be able to sleep tonight. I know things have been very unsettled in your mind because you were missing this little piece of the puzzle. But Yitzchak Avinu came back in the guise of Eliyahu Hanavi. Okay, so now we wrap it all up. The Purim story, the salvation of Purim, the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh says, was in the merit of Yitzchak Avinu. If it's in the merit of Yitzchak Avinu, who else would keep on reappearing in the context of the Purim story other than the Gilgal of Yitzchak, namely Eliyahu Hanavi? And therefore Eliyahu Hanavi comes and he wakes up Moshe Rabbeinu to pray for us. And Eliyahu Hanavi is the one who is aware of the true motivation of Esther to invite Haman to the party. And Eliyahu Hanavi is the one who taught Reb Chaim Volozhiner that the gezerah of Purim was not with blood, but rather was with cement. And who else would dress up in his best charvoina costume to save the Jewish people other than Eliyahu Hanavi Zachor Latov? So they were asking me, here it's Saturday night in Chicago at a book signing, and you're going to have to speak about Eliyahu Hanavi in the context of Purim. How are you going to do it? We just did it. Very simple. Eliyahu Hanavi behind the scenes is like the main character of the Purim story. You say, I can't remember everything you just said. That's why you have to buy the book. Thank you so much, everybody. Agut Tavach, Gesund Tavach. Thank you so much for hosting me. Bracha v'hatzlacha, and hope to see you again very soon. B'siyata d'shmaya. Thank you.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.